here have ever been told or told someone else, would you just be patient? Or would you just wait? Did you actually know that there's a difference between waiting and being patient? In our culture and in our time, we use them interchangeably. But they're really not the same thing. Anyone can wait. I mean, think about it. How many people here love to go to Walmart where there's 24 checkout lanes and only 2 checkers and about 18 people in each lane? Most of us would rather have a root canal than stand and wait in line. But you can wait, can't you? You can not be happy about it. And you can be thinking of all the things that you should be doing. And you can be fidgeting. And you can be complaining. But you can wait. Or how about traffic? How many people here love to be coming down the interstate or the freeway and all of a sudden there is a traffic jam and you have no idea how long it's going to take before you can get through? Maybe it's just me, but these are some of my big pet peeves. I hate waiting in line. Or how about at the doctor's? What is the place that they actually call that you stay at? The waiting room, that's right. But do we have to be happy about it? No, thank you, we know. There's a difference. Patience, however, is the active obedience by us. So everyone can wait, but it doesn't mean you have to be patient in the waiting. To be patient means that we have to continuously make ourselves come to that point of peace that only God can give. You know, the true definition, I thought about this for quite a while, and God gave me the true definition of patience. It is a continual dying to one's self. That means that you have to continually be disciplined to relinquish our wants and our desires and to quiet ourselves into a peaceful waiting on God's timing. I want to back up. As I said, this is actually going to be our Advent theme. Waiting patiently. As I was looking up in the back of my concordance for patience, I found patient, patience. But the interesting thing was, when I came to patiently, every scripture verse in the Bible started with waiting patiently. There was 14 verses that were in my concordance of waiting patiently. So that, before we get into Advent, there are really a lot of people in the Old Testament that had to learn how to wait patiently. So I wanted to go back and start with Noah. How many here realize that Noah was like 480 years old when God told him to build the ark? And he didn't send rain until he was 600 years old. That's 120 years. Now, we don't know when Noah actually physically started building the ark. We don't know if he went out immediately and got to it. It could have taken 120 years to make that size of a boat. I don't know. But it was 120 years. Now, we also know that scholars really believe that it had never rained on the earth until God sent the flood. Everything had been watered from the ground. It was like a mist. It was like a heavy dew. So to have God say, I want you to build a boat because I'm going to send rain. To take a lot of faith in Noah. But also, what about all the people that were so corrupt and so wicked that he had to live with? When they started seeing him build a boat, and they probably started asking him, why are you building something? And he says, because God's going to send rain. You're nuts. Absolutely nuts. I don't even know what rain is, but you're nuts. And a year goes by. 2 years goes by. See, Noah had his sons involved too. There was 3 sons. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And they were also helping build the boat. 60, 70 years into this, did they start saying, you know, Dad, are you really sure about this? No, I had to wait. I had to be patient. And then he gets the boat done. God says he's supposed to have all the animals on the boat. Do you ever think, if you wondered, how am I going to get the animals there? What am I supposed to do? But no, Noah patiently waited, because God said he'd bring them. And sure enough, all these animals showed up, 2 by 2, to enter the ark. Now we also know from scriptures that Noah and his family, his sons and his sons' wives and his wife and the animals all got into the boat. They shut the door, and nothing happened. In fact, it was quite a bit of time before the first drop fell. I don't know about you, but would you have been patiently waiting inside that ark with all these people, with all these animals, hearing the noise outside, the ridicule, the mocking, while patiently waiting on God? Well, Noah did. And I think there was a reason for that. That continued to give him time to build his little faith in God into a much bigger faith. A faith of trusting. A faith of coming to that peace that was settled in his soul, that if he had to have waited another 10 years, I really think Noah would have done it. And then when he was in the boat, after the rains came and left, he had to wait for the water to go down. See, when God told him the plan, he never said, okay, this is my plan. This is how long you're going to be in the boat. This is how long it's going to rain. This is when the water's going to go down. This is when That's the kind of person I am. That's what I would have liked. I want an entire itinerary. I want A, B, C with all the little subdivisions. No, he didn't do that. So it quit raining, and the whole earth was flooded, and he waited, and he waited. Did you know that they were in the ark for a year? And each time, he would send something out to see if it came back. Can you imagine what his sons and his sons' wives felt each time he sent something out? Do you think they were patient, waiting to see if they could get out of that ark? I don't know, maybe. I'm going for me, and I think I would be going stir crazy by that time. But then we're going to jump ahead to where we read today with Abraham. Again, God has now got a new earth going with new people. And yet Abraham is the only man, just like Noah, that God says, I'm going to establish my new covenant with. With Noah, he put the covenant of the rainbow in the sky. But with Abraham, it was a different covenant. This was going to be huge. He was going to be the father of all the generations. Did you catch that second scripture when God said, I want you to look up in the sky, count the stars, if you can count them. And that's how many your inheritance will be. That's how many of your ancestors are going to be out there. And he tells us, Abraham, we said, was 75 years old when God told him that he was going to be the father of all the nations. And yet he still did not have a child. Now, what I didn't read was, where Sarah, knowing all this, after a while of waiting, not so patiently, decides to take matters in her own hands. She gets the brilliant idea, well, since God's not doing his part, I'm going to help things along a little. So she decides it'd be a good idea to take her slave girl, Hagar, and give her to Abraham, so that way he can have children through her, since she was too old. Or so she thought. Now, the interesting thing here that really hit me kind of hard this last couple of weeks, we were watching the Bible series again on DVD at the Youth Group in Auburn, and I was watching the dynamics more between Sarah and Abraham with that decision. See, it wasn't up until that point that I am aware of, at least scriptures are silent, everybody had one wife. It was one man and one wife joined together. As far as I know, I could be wrong. This is the first time in Scripture where a wife gives was another to her husband. Now the funny thing is, Abraham was the one that talked to God. He knew the promise. And yet he thought that sounded like a good idea. She wasn't just Sarah that's the bad guy at this. I mean, Abraham was all for it. But neither one of them was prepared for the emotional rip and repercussions that one decision was going to make. Sarah was not prepared for the time that Abraham was in with Hagar. What she was going to feel. What she was going to think. How her whole motives and her mind was going to be changed. And Abraham did not realize, by severing that union, the emotional baggage he also was going to feel. Now, not to mention that a child comes from that union. His name is Ishmael. And since Abraham and Sarah had jumped the gun, Abraham is crying out to God, I am no heir. You promised me that I'm going to be a father of nations. And yet my only heir is, there was another ancestor that we talked about that was going to get it, or he had his son through a slave trade. And God tells him that Ishmael is not going to be the heir. He's going to make a great nation of him, but he is not going to be the one that is going to go through Abraham's line. It's going to be Abraham and Sarah's child. Now, it isn't until Abraham is 99 years old that God finally makes it happen. And Sarah becomes pregnant. God tells him at 75 and then comes through when Abraham is 100. That's 25 years. That's 25 years of waiting. Patiently? No, I don't think so. Another thing that God showed me was we focus a lot on the next test, Abraham, after Isaac is older, grown. And God asked him to sacrifice his one and only son. Did it ever occur to you that probably the reason why God gave that test to Abraham was because he failed the first one? Think about it. If Abraham would have waited patiently and taken his little faith and expanded it and made it bigger, so that way he would have waited for Isaac in the first place, would God have ever asked him to sacrifice his son later? Or was it because Abraham failed miserably the first time? The first test, they took matters in their own hands and tried to help speed things along. Now, one could look at that test in a negative light. However, just like Jonah, we know that God is the God of second chances. And God full well knew that he was never going to make Abraham actually sacrifice his son. Why would he, when he said that his offspring would come from Isaac? And yet God gave Abraham the opportunity, the second chance, to take that little faith, that little shaky, wavering faith, and expand it into bigger faith. One that he knew that if he waited on God, and this time patiently, think about it, Isaac is laying on the altar that he helped his dad build. He allowed himself to crawl up there because he was a big boy. And even though Abraham is trying so hard to be obedient in sacrificing his son, I can guarantee you he was waiting for that voice to say, stop. We're going to be looking the next few weeks from Abraham down to Isaac. Isaac to Jacob, Jacob to Joseph, on through the Old Testament, of the acts of patience It went far beyond waiting. It was the obedience. It was that constant dying to one's own self, one's own wants, one's desires. To be able to let the peace of God, which passes all understanding, quiet their hearts in that time when they want something to when it's God's timing. I thought about this a lot on the way home. We were talking about different examples of things, and when we try to take matters in our own hands and we don't do it in God's ways or God's timing, do you realize that you don't just affect yourself, but you're affecting others as well? And even those that we don't even know that we're affecting. Every action that we do has another action or consequence, either good or bad, for other people. Now, I was thinking of my dad. He started this prison ministry. What if when God told him that he was going to go into ministry, and he did tell him that, but what if instead of allowing God to work the things out and line everything up, he jumped the gun and thought he knew best and started in a different direction? Even if God would have gotten that prison ministry going, it either wouldn't have been through my dad, or the people who were affected and blessed by that ministry might have missed out if it had happened a year later, 2 years later. We're coming up with so many examples of opportunities that God puts in our path. Am I the only one that ever hears, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it? It took me until this year before I finally came to the place where I said I was able to say, I am content in my restlessness. I always struggled with that. Paul always said, in all things be content. How? How can you be content when I want something else? Or when God's told me what I'm supposed to do, but I don't know a time frame? Well, there's a reason. Because if he told us, I can guarantee you, I would be spending all of my time trying to make it happen. I would be just like Abraham and Sarah, helping God out a little. But he's got so much stuff in that, what is it, the dash that they say of our lives? Well, you know, that dash is made up of a series of mini dashes. And when we try to jump the gun, when we can't wait and we can't have that patience, and we try to do what we want to do and we think we should do it, those little dashes are affected. And along with those little dashes are all of the interconnecting web of people and lives that we would be touching or not touching if we choose to go it on our own and not go wait for God's timing and God's ways. So my challenge to you today, as we're going to be looking at this for the next several months, is to really think to yourself, what does it mean to wait? What does it mean to be patient? And then ask God to start working in your heart to show you those areas that maybe you need a little rethinking on. Maybe you need some work on. And maybe you even need a little pat on the back saying, you know what? You're doing really good in this spot. You've taken that little faith and you made it a bigger faith. Hang in there. Keep going. Wait for my timing.